Hey guys, and welcome to another video tutorial. In this lesson we're going to be going over the database models. So we're going to be learning how to update information, post information, and collect information. This lesson's pretty long, so I'm going to leave it here and jump straight into the video. Hey guys, so in the last lesson we successfully connected to the database. If by the way you've stopped your server and you've come back and you're getting a lot of errors when you try and start it, it's probably because you don't have the MongoDB running in the background. So just make sure that's the case. Alright, so today we're going to be learning how to use models. So the first model that I'm going to create is a user model. We're going to use it to sort of start our authentication system, and we're going to create like a sign up route, which is going to be super basic. It's not even going to ask for a password for now, but we'll get into all of that later. So what we want to do is we want to create a new folder and call it models, and then a new folder within that and call it user. Within the user folder we're going to have index.js and schema.js, like so. Within the index.js file we want to require mongoose, so we're going to go const mongoose and require it. And then we also are going to require the schema file, even though I know there's nothing in it right now, but there will be. So, like so. Okay, so what we need to do is we just need to export the mongoose model from this. So we can do module.exports and then mongoose.model, and then this accepts two parameters, the first being the name. So we're going to call it user, and then next is the schema. So we're just going to put in the schema variable. And again, this doesn't equal anything, but we're going to change that right now by making the schema. Okay, so what is a schema? A schema is basically a set of rules given to a model so that you know maybe we have a name and it's required, and we have an email that needs to be unique and is also required, that sort of thing. So how we create one of these is we're just going to, again, const mongoose equals require mongoose, like so. And then we're just going to do a module.exports, and that's going to equal a new mongoose.schema, like so. And then this is a function which accepts some options, and these options are the sort of rules that we're going to set for the tables. So we're going to have three options or three values. We're going to have a name, email, and age. And then what we can do is we can say we need to define a type for this name, so we can set it to string, and we can set required to true if it's required. And we'll just do the same for the email and the age, like so. And then what we can do here is, for example, we can make this into an array, and then the second parameter is the message we want to receive if this is not true. So if we haven't inputted a name, then this will obviously be required. So we should say like, please enter a name, like so. And then we can do the same for email. Please enter an email address. And then we can do the same for age. Please give us your age, like so. There's a lot more you can use. For example, you can use min, and you can do exactly the same thing. So we could say 16, and we could say you must be at least 16, something like that. Okay, so once we have this schema and it's being exported and imported into the model, what we're going to do is we're just going to create a new route for us to sign up users. So I'm going to create a new file in my routes folder called auth.js, and a lot of it's going to be similar to this, so I'm just going to copy and paste it, and instead of the user controller I'm just going to require a auth controller, and this hasn't been made yet, by the way, so don't worry about that. And then instead of root, because I know that I'm just gonna have like a post to API auth sign up, and there's not going to be a GET request or anything. I'm not going to bother doing like the root.get.post. I'm just going to throw the function in here, and it's going to be auth controller, and maybe we'll say sign up user. Okay, so now we need to make this function here. So if we go to our controllers and create a new file and just call it auth, like so, we will then need to have a const sign up user function, which is going to have a request and res, and then we want to do mod exports and do sign up user. And again, this is the same as doing sign up user equals sign up user, but because it's the same, we don't need to repeat ourselves there. Okay, I'm just gonna throw in a dot block that I already have for this, just to space things out and make things look a bit nicer. Okay, so what does this need to do? So this needs to get the name. So we can do request.body.name. And again, we went over this in the routing sort of lesson where let's see if we can find it. It's probably in here. And yeah, we added this sort of which user, which kind of gets the request.body.name. So exactly same thing as that. So we'll do const email equals request.body.email, and we'll do const.age equals request.body.age. Okay, so now we need to create this user. So what we're going to do is we're going to require our user model that we just created. So back directory into models and then user. And then index.js is going to be the first thing that's read. And just to make this super clear, it's going to then require the schema and export this mongoose.model with the schema information within it. Okay, so how we create a new user, we can just do user.create. And now within this object here is just the sort of values which you want to insert into the object, into the user table. So we could do name, email, age, and again, this is just like name, but we don't want to repeat ourselves, so we don't have to. And as you remember, in the utils and in database, I set things to promises. So this is actually going to return a promise. So we can say .then, and if it succeeds, then it's going to spit back the object that's been inserted into the database. So we can just call it user, and we can say return res.json with a message saying you have now signed up, something like that. And then maybe like we can give back the user object here. Okay, and then if there's any errors, we can catch them like so. And if, by the way, any of these validation errors fail in the schema, what we can do is we can actually listen for them, and we can just do if error.name is equal to validate error, I believe. I think it's actually validation error, like so. Then all of the errors that will be spat back at us are to do with these sort of validation requirements here. But if not, then we still want to do something with this error, so maybe we could just like else some more error handling needs to be here, but for now we can just do return res.status, and maybe we'll get a 500 and do a JSON with a message like there was an unexpected error. Something along them lines will do. Okay, so what are we going to spit back when we have an error? So let's say return res.status, say 422 as an unprocessable entry, and then let's do JSON, and we can say errors is equal to error.errors, and that's going to give us an object of all of the errors from this validation, sort of when it tries to create this user, and it will read basically everything that's wrong with our information, and it will spit back an object array of errors. So that would be within there, and we can just give it a message as well, maybe saying like there was an issue with your request, like so. Okie dokie. Right, so that should pretty much be it. Let's change this to sign up a user and save the information into the database. There we go. Okay, so let's test this out. I'm going to go over to Postman and I'm going to create a post request to API v1, and we'll do auth sign up like so, and I'm only going to send the name, so we should get some errors back. Yep, we get there is an issue request, and we can see that we say please enter an email address, and we say age, please give us your age. Okay, so if I just type in Joe here for email, you can see that that error goes away, but it's not a valid email address. So how do we do valid email addresses? Okay, so valid email addresses are fairly simple, and this goes the same with any sort of additional validation you want to do. We could do unique here as well, just to make sure that email addresses are unique, but this isn't something that allows a message to be sent back. We need to do our own validation for this unique. I'm getting a red underline here, but I think it might just be my editor. Yep. Okay, so how do we do sort of custom validation on a value? Well, luckily Mongoose has this validate option here, and what we can do is we can pass an object which will have a validator. This needs to be equal to a function of some sort, so we just put this for now, and then we can pass in the message what we want to do if this comes back as false. So we can say please enter a valid, or what's cool actually is you can get the value of the whatever the person inputted by just doing in curly braces here value. So we can say value was an invalid email, like so, and then what we can do is we can just do const validate email is equal to a function, and then we can use this function instead of having to write it in here. And then it actually accepts one parameter, and this is the current value of whatever we tried to save, so we can just say value here. Okay, so validating email addresses are a bit hard. You can do it with a regex expression, but it's super long and kind of annoying. But just for an example, I'm just going to return false, so that this will always error, so we can see what the error will be. So obviously it's just Joe, and then we get this, Joe was an invalid email. Okay, so let's actually validate this email. I'm going to use an npm package called email validator. I can see that it's pretty popular. It has over 123,000 weekly downloads, so that gives me some confidence in it. So I'm just going to copy this line and cancel my server and paste it in. Okay, once that's started, I can just then start my server back up again, and then let's just copy this and let's put it in the top here. Let's change this to const, and let's see what this function does. Okay, so this returns true because it's a valid email. Okay, so that's quite nice. We can just return the value of this function and then replace the string with this value, and then this will give us whether it's a valid email or not. Okay, so let's go back to Postman, and we should see invalid email, and then if we do Joe at joe.com, this should go away. Yep, and it just has our age. Okay, so then let's say age is 16, and we click send, and we say you have now signed up. Okay, so viewing information can be done in quite a lot of ways. You can do it in the terminal. You can sort of like search through your databases. I like to have a sort of client which helps me do this, and I use MongoDB Compass, which is a tool from MongoDB, which is exactly for what I'm using it for, just like browsing your databases. It does a cool couple more things after that, which analyzes some of your data, but we won't go into that in this lesson. So once this is booted up, you can just connect to localhost with just localhost and then the default port and just connect. You should have this API or whatever you called the database in your left hand side here with a users, and we can see the inserted information. Okay, so remember earlier on I said that this unique thing wasn't a sort of, you couldn't add a message and it gives back a response. So look what happens when we try to submit the same information with the same email address when this has been set to a unique field. We just get there was an unexpected error, and yeah, that's because we hit this point here where we just say there's a 500 error. So maybe we should also for now console.log the error that actually happened, and then let's try again. Okay, so now we get this duplicate key error collection. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually add some validation into our schema, our custom one again, which just validates is unique. So we can say like const email is unique, and then we get the value of the email. And then what we can do is we can just get the count of how many emails with the same value exists. So let's do mongoose.model and select the model that this is, the user model. And we can do .count, and then within these options, so this object here, we can actually define what we want to count against. So we want to say count all where the email is equal to the value. And then this actually returns a promise like any other Mongoose thing that we're doing. So we could do .then with the count value here, but what I think would be slightly better is we should make this into an async function by just typing in async here. We can then have access to the await function, so we can do count equals await and then like this. So this is going to actually get the return of this promise and just give it straight back to this variable. So I feel like that's slightly better. And then we can just return if the count is equal to 0. So if there are no emails that with the existing string, then the email is in fact unique. And then how we can add like multiple validators onto this validate object, if we can just turn this into an array and then copy the function basically, and we can say email is unique, and then we can say value maybe what or is already in use, like so. And then instead of this horrible error that we're getting in the terminal, when we send, we should get this joe@joe.com is already in use. So you'd be like, oh cool, I'll do joe2@joe.com, and there we go, we signed up. And if we go into the database and just refresh the data, there you go. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just update some of these user roots. For example, let's go into the roots file of it and let's see. Let's get rid of this post altogether. So let's get rid of this. We'll change the users to like the user to a plural, so users, and then we can just say get users, and then we'll say update user. So I'm just changing these couple things here, and I'll have to obviously change that on the controller side. So we don't have this which user function anymore, which was kind of pointless anyway. We have this update user function and then get users function. Okay, so let's actually make this collect the users. So just like in the auth controller, we need to require this user model, like so. And then let's just say user.find, and if you want to find all users, you can just give an empty object in here, and then we say .then users, like so, and then we can do .catch, and sorry about that, we can do .catch, and we can do error, and then we can say return res.status, maybe just a 422, I guess, and then we can say message there was an error collecting the users, and then we'll just give back this error object here. And then if there wasn't an error, then we can go ahead and in the JSON we're gonna just replace this with maybe message the users were successfully collected, and then we can say users, and that's just going to print this user object here. Make sure that we update these module exports as well. So this is now update user. Okay, so now let's try out this new get users request on the API. So in Postman, I'm going to change this to a get, and I'm just going to do API /v1/users, and that should give us back, yep, the users that we have inserted from the database. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to update the update function. So this one down here. So we already have the user ID in the parameter of the URL. If you can remember, it's just a post request to / and then the user's ID. This ID corresponds to the first like this user right here. As you can see, if I copy this ID and paste it in here, it's literally exactly the same. And if I click send, then then you can see that the user you want to update is this ID. So we can use that. We can do user.find1, and then this finds the first user matching whatever this object is. So we can say _ID is equal to the user ID. And the reason why I'm doing _ID is you can see in Mongoose it's done by _ID, and then you have this object ID. You can change this to be an integer of like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then just ID, kind of like similar to what it is in MySQL if you like, but I kind of like this way of using it, to be honest. So once we have that, we can then just do .update, and we can just say update the name to request.body.name. So if we post a name, it'll update that name. And we can do .then if it succeeds. We'll be like success. And then we can do a .catch if there's an error. And just like above, I'm gonna just copy this error here and throw it in here. And then instead of this message here, I'm just gonna put it in here, and we can say the user has been updated. So by default, the update functionality doesn't run through the validators of the model. So we're gonna have to add our own validation at the top here. You can sort of fake this with the model validators, so we don't have to have like basically a validation object which does the same thing as the model. Or you could use, for example, if we get rid of this .update, it returns the user here. We could do user.name equals the request.body.name, and then on the user.save, we can then this sort of stuff, and then this will then fail if it doesn't match the validation. But it's a little bit harder because that's going to fail each time just because of the unique functionality we have. It will obviously not be unique because the email address is the same as the one existing, but we're going to fix that in the upcoming lessons where we're going to go over sort of how to customize these validation functions here, and we can say like if the user isn't the current user, that sort of thing. but that's all to come. So let's just see if this works. So in Postman, I'm just going to have a post requester here. I'm going to make sure the body has a name that's different. Let's see, so it says Joe at the moment, so yep, Joseph Smith is fine. And let's click send, and it says user has been updated. Let's go to Compass and refresh, and we can see it says Joseph Smith. Okay, so a couple small things I picked up on when I was editing this video is this age is a string when really it could be set to a number in the type. Like so. And then another thing I picked up on is this else condition doesn't really need to exist because this returns, so we could just get rid of this and have something like this, which kind of reads a little bit better for me. But yeah, I think that was it that I picked up on this tutorial. Okay, so I think that's it for this tutorial. We've gone over a lot, so I'm going to leave it here. We've gone over the validation and the posting to a database. We've gone over updating a user and collecting users. And in the next lesson, we're probably going to have a little bit more of a look into the validation around the users before jumping straight into the authentication lessons. But yeah, stay tuned for them. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video, and subscribe to upcoming videos using the bell. Thank you.